monthly interventional cardiology webinars. This is the 12th webinar in series, and with me to moderate the webinar, Dr. Prasad Reddy sir, who is the Director of Cardiology at AIG Hospitals, and Dr. Anuj Kapadia, who is the Senior Interventional Cardiologist at AIG Hospital. So I welcome them on board for this webinar. So topic for today's discussion is balloon and dilatable and uncrossable lesions. This is one of the most common problem which is encountered into daily practice. At times it is anticipated, at times it's not so anticipated. So scheme of the today's webinar would be my colleague Dr. Raju Menon will talk on approach to balloon uncrossable and undilatable lesions to understand and how we can form a strategy and a troubleshooting. Then my colleague Dr. Uday Kiran will discuss some of the cases and how we encountered the problems and how we managed, and Dr. Bhishma also would demonstrate a few cases where we had to use some special devices. So with that, I request Dr. Raju Menon to start off his presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Swaroop, and very good afternoon to everyone. Over a period of next 20 to 25 minutes, I'll just take you through few case examples and see how we actually approach a balloon uncrossable and a balloon undilatable lesion. I'm sure each one of us during our practice, during some time or the other, might have encountered this type of a situation. And as we go through different terms like rotor regret, stent regret, balloon regret, we all know that there was always a time when we cursed ourselves that we didn't follow the algorithm and landed into trouble in the end. So let's start with a case vignette. So this person was post CABG, and he had a right coronary artery CTO. You can see the distal vessel is totally occluded, and in addition to that he had a very tight lesion in the mid right coronary artery. Now, anticipating trouble, this patient, we went ahead with the femoral route using a AL1 guide to give the maximum possible support. But having crossed the wire and then trying to push the hardware, there was no balloon which was actually crossing. And here, this video I have just put in to show you that even a microcatheter was not crossing that particular lesion. And naturally, this is the situation where we start thinking what to do next and how to go about this particular situation. If we look at the definition of an uncrossable lesion, it's basically a lesion that has been crossed by a guide wire, but the balloon has not crossed. So this fundamentally differentiates it from a CTO, where crossing the lesion with a wire is a great challenge. But a balloon uncrossable lesion is where the wire has comfortably gone in, but after that there is no hardware which is actually crossing that particular lesion. How do we go ahead? So this is a very elegant algorithm which Dr. Brilakis has actually put forward in his book, and he keeps teaching. And pasting something like this in your cath lab and following this particular algorithm significantly helps us. Now there are different lines which are given here. So the first line, second line management, third line. But it's important that you need to individualize in each particular patient. And it could be the fourth line, which is the first thing which you do, and later change over to another strategy. Or it could be a combination of modalities which you do to make sure that you actually cross the lesion. So just in summary, the first thing which you do is try to use a small balloon to make sure that you cross the lesion. If that balloon is not going in, then you can use what is called granuloplasty, which is not a very common modality which we use. At least in our practice, we don't use granuloplasty as a routine. Probably it is one of the last things which we might use. Then we try to increase the support either at the access level or at the guide catheter level or at the wire level. Still we are having problem, then we try to take help of microcatheter or use some cutting or puncture techniques. Of course, we have laser and atherectomy which come to our rescue when nothing else works. And finally, the subintimal techniques, which we again hardly use in a patient who has an open vessel, though it's commonly used in patients with chronic total occlusion. This is not something which we use in our daily practice. So over a period of next few slides, we'll try to look at some of the common practices which we go ahead. We have never used a subintimal technique, nor have we used granuloplasty on purpose to actually dilate a lesion. So those are the things which we won't touch upon, but most of the other things we'll try to look into. So what do we mean by small balloon? So at least our favorite balloon which we use is the Ringen Plus, which comes as 1.25, but we have nowadays newer balloons like the Tezuna or the Ryurai balloon. Of course, we have the Sapphire 2, the Nick Nano, which some of our colleagues will be mentioning. This is just to show you what is the crossing profile of each of these balloons. Now, Ringen Plus, as I mentioned, it has a slightly larger crossing profile, at least theoretically, but practically we have found that this is something which significantly helps, and if a Ringen Plus doesn't go in, there's hardly any other balloon which goes in. We have of course used a Sapphire 2 1mm and a Nick Nano balloon in certain special situations. Now what if the small balloon doesn't go? So you have taken a Ringen Plus and it is not going in. What do we do next? One is what is called the balloon wedging or a nose diving technique. Basically you try to dilate the balloon, and while it is deflating you try to push the balloon. So the concept here is that the most distal end of the balloon tries to modify the lesion, and as you deflate it tends to wedge in further and move forward. So this is a commonly used method when the small balloon is not going in. We might use slight balloon rotation. Remember that this has to be done very carefully, otherwise you can land up with some kind of balloon entrapment and issues related to that. We can sometimes reshape the tip of the balloon. So we take out the balloon and then the most distal tip, we just make a bend on that and again put it on the wire and try to go in, just to change the direction. Something like what we do in the wire bias, the change in the tip of the balloon can probably help in pushing the balloon. You can change the company, as I mentioned. If Ringen Plus is not going, probably you'll use a Sapphire or a Nick Nano. Just change the company and see if it works. Sometimes you try to dilate with a large balloon proximally. So again, the tears which occur because of the proximal inflation can extend distally and then again facilitate the small balloon crossing. One of the techniques which we have found extremely useful while crossing Ringen Plus is to put a continuous pressure. So there are different ways. One is you try to just keep pushing the balloon. The other way is be patient, just apply constant pressure with a slight backward tug on the wire, and just close your eyes and make sure that you give about 15-30 seconds to allow the balloon to slowly go in. Many a time you realize that the balloon actually progresses quite comfortably when you give that constant pressure. So that's something which you can use. Now what are the problems? You can lose the guide wire position. So aggressive pushing can cause the guide wire to come out. It can cause ostial dissection. It can cause distal guide wire perforation. It can cause balloon entrapment. It can cause guide catheter dissection. So all those issues can occur. Of course, granuloplasty is something which is described in literature, but this is not what we use commonly. Now, important thing to remember here is you use a very small balloon, 1 to 1.5 mm balloon, and never exceed around 2 millimeters. So you just put there and then keep increasing the pressure till the balloon actually bursts. Naturally, you should make sure that it is prepared well, because if there is air there, it can cause air embolism. The contrast can cause dissection, and very rarely it can produce coronary rupture. But if you follow the principle of 1.5 balloon or 2 mm balloon, it hardly occurs. Again, re-emphasizing that we hardly use this methodology. Extremely important thing to do when the balloon is not going in is, of course, to increase the support. So how do you increase the support? You can either change the access. Femoral generally gives better access. You can increase the French size. You can change the guide catheter. You can use a guide catheter extension. You can use, of course, a buddy wire, wire anchoring technique, or a balloon anchoring technique. Now, the wire anchoring and balloon anchoring was something which was used quite often before the guide catheter extension came. Now, with guide catheter extension, we rarely use these methods. Most of the times, we try to use guide catheter extension as our preferred modality. Now, this is just to illustrate the different modalities. So, you have a patient where you have used a 6 French guide. You can probably deep throat the guide. Again, be careful, don't do all these things when you are early in your interventional career. It requires a lot of experience to make sure that you don't dissect the vessel by pushing it in. A gentle clockwise rotation will actually push in. Sometimes inspiration helps in this maneuver, and always be extremely careful. you can increase the French size. So from 6, if you go to 7 or 8, it keeps increasing. You can change the guide. As we know, AL1 is one of the best guides as far as support is concerned. You can use a buddy wire, you can use a guide extension, any of these, and of course, you can use a balloon anchoring technique. It could be distal proximal balloon anchoring, or it could be in a side branch. The commonest which we use is in a side branch. So this is just to illustrate how change in the guide catheter can help us. You can see here, this is an anomalous right coronary artery with a kind of functional CTO. So initially it was through a radial route with a AR1 guide. AR1 was sitting very well, but there was hardly any hardware which was going in. Then a AL1 was used. Again, AL1 was sitting in, but after the wire crossed and the initial balloon dilatation, again there was no support and the whole hardware was actually coming out. Finally, it was changed to a femoral route. So increase in support by changing to femoral, change in the guide catheter size, 7 French and AL1, and finally using a guide catheter, guide extension through that. So all modalities, so change in guide catheter, change in the access site, increase in support, and then finally using guide extension, everything was used, and finally leading to a successful outcome. So you need to be patient and make sure take all the modalities which are at your disposal to increase the support while using, while actually crossing a uncrossable lesion. Now this is just an example to show you again a RCA which was distally kind of subtotally occluded, and nothing was going in. Finally just a wire was placed into the RV branch, and that helped in crossing the balloon, and after that of course the procedure was quite simple with a good end result. Balloon anchor, generally we do it in the side branch. We put a balloon there and inflate and then try to push the hardware. Again, important to use a small size balloon. Do not oversize and do not go to high pressures. It can cause angina while you are inflating. It can cause vessel dissection, perforation. So it's not without complications. That's the reason why guide extension is something which we commonly use. What are the problems which we can face when we are trying to increase the support? The guide can produce dissection. The guide extension can produce dissection. How do we avoid? You can use the inchworm technique, which my colleague Dr. Uday will show you, and never ever inject when the pressure is damped. So that's a fundamental principle. If you find a damped pressure on the tracing, never inject contrast. So this is an example of a patient with a RCA calcified lesion. The plan was to do IVL in this patient, and the JR guiding was not giving support. Though it was fitting well, it was not giving support. So we changed over to AR1, did the IVL. We were all excited that we did a great thing by increasing the support, only to find later that the AR1 which was jumping in, it was too good for the vessel, and it was jumping in, it caused a nasty dissection there in the proximal RCA. Now again, 3 fundamental principles. When you have a proximal dissection, don't keep injecting, it's going to increase the dissection. Don't lose the wire, and always put the proximal stent first. This is probably one of the rare situations in interventional cardiology where you will put a proximal stent rather than start stenting from the distal segment. And of course, this patient had a good result and he is presently doing fine. Now we have varied the guide catheters and micro catheters. Again, guide wires and micro catheters which help. Basically, you can change over to heavy duty guide wires like BHW, or you use Ironman and those kind of wires which give you good support. And you can use any of these particular micro catheters to actually exchange the wire. Again, what are the risks? Basically, you might lose the wire, you might lose the guiding, it can cause vessel injury and microcatheter entrapment, especially with a microcatheter, something like Corsair, where you keep rotating. If you over rotate it, it's always important that when you do few turns in anti-clockwise direction, you again do it in clockwise direction to unrotate it. Otherwise, it keeps turning there and then finally it breaks at the tip. We had one situation of a Corsair embolization because it broke because of excessive rotation. So those kind of things should be avoided. This is a wire cutting technique where you can put 2 wires, inflate a balloon and then pull 1 wire, or put 2 wires on and 2 different balloons and use a seesaw technique to actually do it. Now let's come back to our case and see what happened to this case. So again, just to recap, we have excellent support, femoral AL1 guide, and we have a proximal uncrossable lesion and a distal CTO. So we used a 1.25 mm balloon, a 1.5 mm balloon. We thought probably there might be a problem with the wire, so let us exchange it for a heavy duty wire. So we wanted to pass a microcatheter. Even the microcatheter was not crossing. So what did we do? The first went ahead with a guide extension, then used a 2 mm balloon, then used a 1.5 mm balloon, then used a 1.25 mm balloon, used a 1.1 mm balloon, but none of those balloons were going. So the first part of our algorithm actually failed in this particular situation. Next, we thought we'll use a microcatheter and then exchange it for another wire so that the balloon goes. Again, none of the microcatheters were passing in. We thought, okay, let's use Corsair, which is something which can help. That again was not working. We used proximal balloon dilatation to see whether it will change the morphology of the undilatable lesion, and after which whether we can cross. Again, this did not help. And this is just to show you the Corsair which was used to actually cross the lesion. But again, Corsair, in spite of rotation, this again did not cross. And then finally we took a rotablation. So we wanted to pass the microcatheter so that we can exchange for the rota wire, but that was not working. So we directly removed the wire and again passed directly with a rota floppy wire, and over that you can see that the rota bar 1.5 mm was crossed. We were just careful to make sure that we don't hit the distal end. As we know, with rotablation we should never go to the distal end of the opaque portion of the wire, because that can actually entrap the whole thing. So finally, once rota went in, then it became extremely smooth. You can see here that the vessel has opened up well with a 2 mm balloon dilatation. It opened up completely, and after that when we used the microcatheter to exchange it for a CTO wire for the distal lesion preparation, you can see that the microcatheter actually went in smoothly. We were afraid to push, but actually it went in so smoothly. So remember, where everything fails, finally rota succeeds. So this is something which we should always remember. Finally, let's talk about the balloon undilatable lesion. So we just spoke about a balloon uncrossable lesion. About balloon undilatable lesion, this is typically how it appears. So you can see the dog boning with a central lesion which doesn't open up. So how do we go about the whole aspect? First thing is whether it's likely to respond to the balloon or not. If it's not likely to respond to the balloon, or it is not responding, simple thing is go ahead with atherectomy. So go ahead with rotablation or laser or both, and after that you decide about balloon dilatation. Now you feel that we can use a balloon and then dilate it, then think about which balloon to use. Now why this fundamental difference? Many a time there will be a lot of things which are spoken about, IVL, cutting balloon, so on and so forth. But remember that these are all bulky balloons. And when we are talking about undilatable lesions, these are lesions which are extremely difficult to cross also. So they go hand in hand, both balloon undilatable and balloon uncrossable lesions. And when the balloon doesn't go in the first place, there is no way that you are going to inflate it. So those are the situations where more often than not, you will always land up with atherectomy, and none of the balloons are ever a replacement for atherectomy when the lesion requires atherectomy. So that's a point which you should always remember when we are treating these type of lesions. So how do we go about if we are going ahead with the balloon first? So you can use a shorter balloon, simultaneous inflation, more than one buddy wires, and of course some special balloons like angiosculp, chocolate balloon, cutting balloon. Now the same algorithm applies for in-stent restenosis, except for one difference, where the initial aspect, if it is available, is to use a laser rather than atherectomy. So atherectomy comes second, laser comes first, but of course many of the centers won't have laser. Then again the algorithm is similar to what we discussed previously, that you do atherectomy and then move on as was discussed in the native lesion. What are the tricks to break a resistant lesion? So you are dilating and it's not opening up with the NC balloon. You use non-compliant balloons, give prolonged inflation, wait for about half a minute, 1 minute, go to high pressure and then keep inflating and deflating repeatedly. That doesn't mean you come back to 0, but say you are at around 20. So you go to 15, 20, 22, 15, like that repeatedly inflate, deflate to see if it opens up. Still it doesn't work, you can go to high pressure with a slightly lower size balloon. So 1:1 balloon, if you use, chances of perforation are very high. So use a slightly lower size balloon but go to higher pressures. Shorter balloon can be used because the hoop stress will be at the center. So if 12 mm balloon is having dog boning, use a 8 mm balloon, that might probably open up the lesion. Of course, 2 balloons and expansion on a body wire. So this is like a poor man's angiosculp. You put another wire beside and open the balloon, then that works as a angiosculp lesion. What can go wrong? Of course, the biggest disaster is vessel perforation, which we need to be worried. The balloon can perforate, causing air embolism or vessel dissection, and balloon entrapment can occur. So different special balloons which we mentioned, I think we already discussed most of this in the previous seminar about cutting balloon, scoring balloon, high pressure balloon and IVL. So cutting balloon, as we know, they are basically heterotomes which are mounted on the balloon, and this is a NC balloon, and you can go up to around 12 to 14 atmospheres. The newer Wolverine balloon has come, which is much better. Dr. Uday will tell you more details about that. Then we have the angiosculp balloon, where there are nitinol wires around the balloon. This is basically a semi-compliant balloon. So remember that if you go to high pressures, that can land you into significant complications. So don't exceed around 12 to 14 atmospheres with an angiosculp balloon. Of course, OPN balloon is the new kid on the block, and it has very high pressures. If you see, the size hardly increases even at pressures of around 35 and 40. And always, if you are using OPN within the stent, it's an advantage. But native vessel, if you are using OPN, we are still not very sure if it is safe enough to do so. The Nick Nano balloon again is a new balloon. It is something like a OPN balloon in a small size, and it significantly helps, as Dr. Bhishma will let you know in the next few talks. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to end my talk saying that it's important that the balloon uncrossable and undilatable lesions are not uncommon in present day practice. Being well versed with different hardware is necessary for successful outcomes. Increasing support at access, guide level and guide wire level helps in crossing the lesion, and rotablation is generally the final answer when everything else fails. So remember never to underestimate the importance of rotablation in these cases. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rajiv, for that detailed, excellent talk and the algorithmic approach. Only when we understand the problem, probably we'll be able to troubleshoot the problem well. Now I request Dr. Uday to start off his presentation, the few of the cases which we encountered and how we tackled those situations. Meanwhile, while Uday is getting ready with his presentation, I can take few of the comments from Prasad Reddy sir and Anuj.
As Dr. Rajiv pointed out that in day-to-day practice, about in some few percentage of patients we may come across the patients where we can enter the lesion with guide wire, but the balloons, none of the balloons may be uncrossable, and sometimes even if the balloon grows also, it may not be fully expanded, the stents or anything, it may not be fully expandable. Dr. Rajiv has elegantly described all the modalities. Hello. So first thing is, whenever we are taking the patient for any intervention, so we have to analyze the angiogram properly and then take precautions in the first stage itself. Take a good guide support, guide wire, guide catheter, and then if necessary go from the femoral approach, and then take a bigger size guide catheter like 7 French or 8 guide catheter, and then even if you after crossing with a routine guide wire, you can exchange with the extra support wire, or you can use a balloon anchoring or a wire anchoring technique, and then go with the smaller balloons. If none of them works, then probably you can go for either this rotational atherectomy, or if laser is available, probably the laser is also useful in some of these situations. So, but we have to analyze the angiogram properly and then plan it, and then go with the particular plan. If one plan doesn't work, probably you have to go for the other modality, I mean this other line of treatment. I think that.
Thank you, Prasad Reddy sir. Now I'll request Uday to start off his presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. So today I'll be discussing about two case examples where we encountered undilatable lesions and how we approached them and how we finally succeeded. So, case 1, 78-year-old female, hypertensive, hypothyroid, presented with acute anterval MI, and she was in cardiogenic shock. So she was pretty sick and taken up for primary angioplasty. So as expected, LAD was the culprit lesion with a thrombotic occlusion in the proximal LAD. LCX was fine. So with IABP support, we did angioplasty to LAD with a good result. At the same time, the non-culprit vessel, the RCA, showed an ostial 99% occlusion. Rest of the vessel was fine. We gave NTG, took another shot, which also was showing 99% occlusion. And there is mild calcification which was visible on the angiogram, but not significant calcium, and the origin was slightly anterior with a horizontal takeoff. So this lesion was not tackled at the same setting because she was a little unstable. So we waited for a week, then brought her back for elective angioplasty to RCA. We went right femoral approach with a 6 French JR catheter, wired it with a BMW guide wire, and this was the first balloon dilatation with a 2.5 into 12 non-compliant balloon, and you can clearly see there is a tight waist at the end of the balloon which didn't yield. Then next we thought we'll upgrade it to a 2.75 to 12 non-compliant balloon. Vessel was around 3 mm in size, but even the 2.75 balloon with high pressure inflation also, it didn't yield. So at this point we thought because it's an ostial lesion, it's a pretty fibrotic lesion which we need to dilate. So what are our options? We thought about it first. So we wanted to take a cutting balloon at this point of time, but the cutting balloon, because of the bulky profile, didn't cross the lesion. And one more problem is we were in with a 6 French guide catheter. So cutting balloon minimum requirement is 6 French guide catheter, and it does not traverse through a 5.5 French guide liner. So in this case we can use a cutting balloon, but we cannot use it with a guide liner support which would help us in crossing the lesion. So cutting balloon didn't cross. So the next closest to the cutting balloon is an angiosculpt. So we took a 2.5 into 10 angiosculpt balloon. It has a better crossing profile and it is a semi-compliant balloon. So it crossed the lesion, but here you can see once it is inflated also, it didn't yield the lesion. So we went up to 12-14 atmospheres, but didn't yield the lesion. So cutting balloon we couldn't use in this case because of the bulky profile and 6 French guide catheter we were stuck with, and angiosculpt didn't yield the lesion. Then we again tried 1:1 dilatation with a 3 into 12 non-compliant balloon at this point, but even here you can see a tight waist and dog boning. Even this did not yield the lesion. So at this point, what are our options left? So obviously, because it's a very tight osteofibrotic lesion, rotablation is one modality that is available, but with such aggressive predilatation strategies which we have done, microdissections are very possible, and it's risky to do rota, and if at all we wanted to do rota, we have to abandon the procedure, maybe call her back after a couple of weeks and then go straight ahead with rotablation. Or second thing, we could switch, take a 7 French guide, then go ahead with a guide liner and try to cross with a cutting balloon. And one more option which we discussed at that time was using a very high pressure, ultra high pressure balloon, that is the OPN balloon. So in this case, we went ahead and took an OPN balloon. We slightly undersized the OPN balloon. We took a 2.5 into 12 size OPN balloon, went up to 35 atmospheres, but it didn't yield. So slightly went up to 40 atmospheres where the balloon yielded the lesion and then ruptured. Here you can see in the other still frame, it completely opened up, yielded the lesion and then it ruptured. So in this video, here you can see there is a difference between rupturing of a OPN balloon versus a NC balloon. See, OPN balloon, it is basically made up of 2 layers, twin layer technology. So it is able to withstand very high pressures, and when it ruptures also, it ruptures in a controlled fashion linearly, and there is less chance of vessel getting perforated. But NC balloon, it ruptures in an uncontrollable fashion, and it's just like a bomb. This is all in theory. Again, it is very unsafe to do any kind of balloon rupture in the coronary, but this day we got away with that. So once the balloon lesion is yielded with the OPN balloon, then we did a 1:1 pre-dilatation with a 3:12 NC balloon. So lesion yielded completely. So we thought we will just finish off the angioplasty, but because the guide catheter support was poor and we tried to push in the stent with a guideliner support which was not coaxially sitting, the entire system came out. Again we were lucky that nothing happened, and we immediately took a 7 French AR guiding, and then here you can see whenever the guideliner is not going, first pass in a non-compliant balloon, inflate it, and when the balloon is being deflated, gently slide the guideliner over the balloon. This is called inchworm technique or telescoping of the guideliner, because guideliner edge is very sharp and it can dissect the vessel, or you can lose the guide catheter position like what happened in this case. So once the guideliner is sitting comfortably, then it is very smooth to deliver the stent. Once stent is deployed, post dilatation, and this is the final result. So from this case, the main learning points what we learned was osteal lesions, even though the calcium looks mild on angiography, which generally tends to underestimate, there are a lot of muscle fibers, circular muscle fibers, which make the lesion very fibrotic, and fluoroscopy will not show this fibrosis. So we should be ready to face a scenario in very tight osteal lesions, especially in elderly individuals. And coming to cutting balloon and OPN balloon, see, cutting balloon precisely cuts the lesion, and pre-dilatation, cutting balloon is always the balloon of choice. OPN balloon has an advantage in under-expanded stents when you do post dilatation in an under-expanded stent, but for pre-dilatation, OPN dilatation is also an uncontrolled dilatation only. So cutting balloon is always preferred. Exception, this case was an exception, it's not the routine. And OPN for pre-dilatation, always try to use a slightly smaller balloon because we are going at a very high pressures. And OPN balloon ruptures are safer than non-compliant balloon, but the balloon should be of smaller size. And guideliner is to be advanced properly, otherwise we may lose the guide catheter and guide wire position, and the result may be compromised. Okay, so this is this is a Wolverine is a cutting balloon. The main idea here is, here you can see, normally the cutting balloon requires a 6 French system to pass through because it's a bulky balloon. But here in the Wolverine, there is a modification of the non-functional height. The cast pad which is there, the height of the cast pad is reduced, whereas the cutting blade's height is normal. So the functionality is not compromised, but the profile of the balloon is reduced. So this Wolverine can pass through a 5 French guiding system. That is the main advantage. And sizes below 3.25 can be passed, but sizes above 3.25 mm again have 4 blades. Sizes below 3.25 has only 3 blades, so it can pass through a 5 French system. But if it is more than 3.25 and 4 blades are there, again it requires a 6 French system. So this has a very good deliverability at the lesion. Coming to the second case, 65-year-old male, hypertensive, diabetic, previous inferior wall, posterior wall MI 1 year back, where he was stented to LCX, now developed with new onset effort angina since 1 month, echo is showing good LV function. So this was the angiogram, left dominant system with patent stent in LCX, and in the mid RCA, mid LAD, you can see there is a calcified lesion with a almost 80 to 90 degrees bend at the mid LAD. There is a shelf of calcium sitting on the undersurface as well as on the top of the lesion, but the lesion is not so tight. This patient we took him up for angioplasty. Initially we tried to pass in a 2.5 and then upgraded to 2.75 NC balloon with gentle predilatation, but here you can clearly see the dog boning effect with the waist, and straight away we understood that this is not going to work. So without aggressive predilatation, and there is heavily calcified lesion with tortuosity. So what are our options? So here the tricky part is rotablation is the answer that we know, but because of the tortuosity we were a little worried how to go about it. So we first exchanged the routine guide wire with a rota wire and then took a 1.5 mm burr and tried burring with it. So the calcium was slightly before the tortuosity. Initially with the initial runs there was a slight loss in the rotations, but later once after a couple of runs then there is no loss in the rotations of the rotablation. So we came to conclusion that it has ablated the calcium but it was unable to negotiate the bend. So what to do now? At this point we thought we can take a chance with 1.25 mm burr and try to proceed, but we were a little skeptical because it can just pass through and may not come back, get stuck and all. So we thought we'll try with a balloon because the 1.5 mm burr was not crossing the lesion. So tested with an NC balloon, but the lesion did not yield. So one thing is, there are two things which a rotablation does. One is it chips off the superficial calcium. Second thing is it alters the compliance of the vessels because it causes micro dissections, and once the calcium is gone the compliance of the vessel wall is altered. So the balloon which could not yield the vessel before rotablation might yield the vessel after that. So that's why we tested with an NC balloon, but the lesion still didn't yield. So then we went ahead with a cutting balloon, 2.5 into 10 mm cutting balloon. Here you can see in the first image that even this balloon was unable to enter and the guide and guide wire were backing. So somehow we could wedge the balloon in the lesion. The distal edge of the balloon was in the lesion, and we tried to slowly engage the lesion, and while deflating tried to push it and inflated multiple times slowly up to 6 to 8 atmospheres only. Always remember, the idea of cutting balloon is only to modify the lesion, it is not for balloon expansion. Okay, never try to expand the lesion by using a cutting balloon. It can cause a lot of complications. Even with the cutting balloon, once the cutting balloon was done, then we took a NC balloon, 3 into 12 NC balloon, and slowly started inflating, went up to high pressures, and here you can see the upper shelf of calcium also gave away and the lesion was completely dilated. Here you can see in the still image. So after rotablation with a 1.5 mm burr and a cutting balloon lesion modification, finally the calcium gave away and the lesion yielded. So once the lesion is yielded, then it was pretty simple, just pass in a stent, dilate, and this is the final result. Although in this case, because the lesion was not so tight, IVL could have been a very attractive option, but availability and cost are two factors limiting it. Rota is always challenging when doing in tortuosity, but yes, still it can be done safely with gentle rotations. Cutting balloon is only for lesion modification, not at all for lesion expansion, and never deploy a stent in an unyielded lesion. It will result in both short-term stent thrombosis as well as long-term ISRs. Thank you.
Dr. Anuj Kapadia to give his comments.
Yeah, this thing about the rota with the tortuosity, we can actually sometimes try extra stiff rota wire, which will generally straighten out the artery sometimes, which helps in actually doing a rota. But there also we have to be extremely gentle in our manipulation of the vessel. That is extremely important. And as Dr. Prasad Reddy was earlier mentioning about planning the procedure, it is extremely important that we always have some people to accompany us during the procedure, plan it with a group and then go ahead, because sometimes we try to do these cameos where we want to do it alone and we get stuck with all these problems, and then one after the other things just spiral.
Now I request Dr. Bhishma to start off his presentation, where we had to use some special plaque modification techniques to save the day. So he'll start his presentation.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'll be presenting a case where both it was uncrossable and undilatable. Mr. NR, who is a 85-year-old male, known hypertensive, diabetic, and a chronic stable angina since 2018, of which an angiogram was done in 2018, and the angiogram was showing a calcified left main with triple vessel disease. Advised a cabbage, but the patient refused, and he was on medical management since then. He presented to us with an NSTEMI with angina and anterolateral ST depressions on the ECG, and the troponin was positive. This was his angiogram on presentation. Here you could see severely calcified coronary arteries, and the LCX is severely calcified with torches and aneurysms on the way there, and all the three vessels are very calcified. So here the culprit was the LCX in view of the anterolateral ECG changes. So we had a heart team discussion about this patient. So the syntax score which was calculated was 29, and the syntax 2 for PCI was 42 with a 4-year mortality rate of 17%, and cabbage the score was 49 with a 4-year mortality of 29%. So after a heart team discussion, and the patient wanted a PCI, so finally it was decided for a PCI. So once the strategy was decided, the issues which were in this patient was, the patient was an elderly patient with a high bleeding risk, anatomy which was calcified, torches and aneurysms, and the LAD will probably require a crossover, and LCX was most likely the culprit here. The plan was to tackle LCX first, take a good support, a 7 French femoral XB 3.5, and predilate the lesion, and do a IVUS run, then use a IVL for plaque modification. So we took an axis, right femoral axis, with a micropuncture technique, with a good puncture there, and this was the PTCM MAC shots, again showing the LCX which we wanted to tackle at that point of time, which was severely calcified with aneurysms in the LCX. So the LAD and LCX both were wired, and the low profile balloon, we had to take a 1.25 low profile balloon, and we started trying to cross the lesion, but the balloon was not crossing, and in fact rupturing. You could see the balloon rupturing there and extravasation of the contrast there, and the 2 mm balloon was not crossing the lesion. You can see the guide backing out since the balloon was stuck there. So like Dr. Rajiv discussed, there the multiple options were used here. We took the best possible guide 3.5 with extra support. Then we took a smaller profile balloons, and again Guidezilla, which was taken here to probably help the balloon to track here. And we, with the help of Guidezilla support, we tried to cross the lesion with a 2 mm and a 1.5 balloon here. Still, even though we crossed, the balloons were getting bursted there because of a calcium specule, and still the guide was backing out. So the other technique which Dr. Rajiv also mentioned was taking another buddy wire. So we took a buddy wire also. So with the help of buddy wire, we tried tracking, but still it was not going. So then suddenly the only option which was in our mind at that point of time, because multiple balloons were rupturing, and because of the calcium specule, and the rotablation was not possible because of the dissection, aneurysms and the tortuosity. The rota was not possible, and IVL won't cross with even when the smaller profiles were not crossing. the option of abandoning the procedure was also considered at that point of time. Then one of the colleague there suggested a balloon which we normally use in CTOs, a 0.85 nano balloon which was on the shelf on that day. So we tried as a last resort, we tried using the nano balloon which had a very low profile crossing profile. The lesion entry was very small and it was a very trackable with a balloon with a very high burst pressure of 23 atmosphere, which regularly useful in CTO treatment, but at that point of time, since most of the smallest profiles were not crossing, we as a last resort we have tried this, and luckily this balloon went in. And the other options when the lesion is not dilatable, as my other colleagues were mentioning, it was an Oppian balloon which was already explained. So here we took a nano balloon. Luckily the nano balloon crossed there and we could dilate the lesion with the help of that balloon. So once the nano balloon was able to cross and dilate the lesion, then it was straightforward. We pre-dilated the lesion with a 2 into 12 AccuForce balloon and a serial dilatation with 2 and 2.5. And once the lesion was pre-dilated, so to modify the plaque, we took an IVL, and the IVL you can see 2.5 into 12 IVL where 80 pulses were delivered. Clearly could see that second slide there where you could see the calcium cracking up and the balloon was expanding well. The problem with calcium, as we all know, it's impedes stunt deliverability, inhibits circumferential calcium stunt expansion, it worsens the long-term outcomes. So like we all know, the IVL, the DISTRUCT-3 study, which proved that it was a safe and effective way to facilitate the stunt implantation, and it has a unique mechanism by which it emits acoustic waves and creates bubbles, and waves passes across the vessel and breaks the calcium. The system here contains a emitter and a cable with a balloon with emitters, which like I said, transmit the acoustic pressures and breaks the calcium. So once the IVL was used and the lesion was cracked open, we could pass the stunt there with the help of a guideliner there, and we put 2 overlapping stunts, 2.75 into 38 Promus Elite stunt there and a 3 into 12 Promus Elite, and then it was a good expansion which we could see. That was the final IVS run, which was showing a good expanded stunt and with no evidence of any dissection or under expansion, and with good IVS MSA, and this was the final result, and with a very good result, well expanded stunt. The patient is doing well. Post procedure uneventful recovery. The patient was discharged at 48 hours and patient is asymptomatic at 2 months follow-up. The patient wanted to get the LAD and RCA later in view of COVID. So my take-home message in this case would be a heart team approach is always necessary in complex cases, and a pre-procedural planning is very crucial in a successful procedure. IVL is very useful in situations where rotablation is not possible, and some special hardware like a nano balloon is a good addition on the shelf in case of undilatable lesions or a calcium specule. And having 2 experienced operators in complex lesions markedly increases the safety and chances of success. And this is our great team at AAG. Thank you.
That elegant presentation. Before Swaroop takes over, there's one question which somebody from the audience has asked, and I would request Swaroop to answer that question. They want to know while treating an undilatable lesion, if the balloon gets entrapped, how to handle that situation.
Yeah, so many times like we discuss the various modalities where how we advance the uncrossable balloon or the undilatable balloon, where we kind of partially wedge the lesion or nose coning or granuloplasty and so on. But one of the one of the important and unanticipated complication is your balloon can get wedged between the calcium and the vessel wall. If that happens, first thing one should do is not to pull that balloon forcefully. Two things may happen. If you try to pull the balloon forcefully, there can be a fracture of the shaft of the balloon, or your guide may dive in and it can cause further proximal dissection. So idea there is you can gently try to release the balloon by doing gentle clockwise or counterclockwise rotation and see with that maneuver whether it frees the balloon. If not, go to a next step, take a guide liner, and you can advance the guide liner up to the portion where your balloon is trapped, and then your guide liner will act as a wedge between the vessel and the vessel wall and the lesion, and it will try to release this balloon. And the advantage of the guide liner is you can apply a gentle force, and that force will be transmitted there, and your guide may not dive in and cause a proximal dissection. So this is invariably this strategy works. Suppose you fail here also, then it depends on what system you are working. If it is a 6 French system, then probably either you upsize the guide without losing the axis, but that is cumbersome. So then you can do a ping pong technique, or take another axis, go in with the 7 French guide by the different axis, and then pass a stiff guide wire alongside the trapped balloon and try to push in your lowest profile balloon and inflate, and many times it releases the trapped balloon.
Yeah, thanks, Farouk. I think a few other things are sometimes you can just alternatively slightly inflate and keep deflating the balloon. And one thing which you use is the indeflator may not be able to give that much negative pressure. One of the common reasons why it gets entrapped is because the balloon has not collapsed completely. So when the indeflator is not sufficient to give the negative pressure, through the 3-way, you put a 50 cc syringe with a plunger and then try to aspirate the balloon. That significantly helps. And of course you can snare over the same wire, you can push the snare and then hold the balloon and then try to pull it back. So those are some of the things which you can try. And of course, while you are doing this, make sure that you keep praying God that you are successful in removing the balloon. Otherwise, you'll end up into trouble. Over to you.
Another question which I would like to ask to Dr. Bhishma is, because IVL is a new modality to do a plaque modification. So after the plaque modification by the IVL, intravascular lithotripsy, how do you decide about the stent? Means at what stage you are comfortable to go in and deploy the stent, and how do you avoid the stent regret after IVL?
So there are two methods where we can use here. One is the imaging, where you can use an IVL or a OCT, and basing on the imaging you can see the calcium cracks which is happening in the vessel after the IVL. So once the calcium cracks, you can use a balloon and see how it expands. You normally take a 1:1 stent. If it's a 3 balloon which expands well, you take a 3 stent. So it's 1:1, and on imaging you can see the calcium cracks. So this is how you decide the sizing of the balloon after an IVL.
Yes, ideally the imaging which is preferred, but many times you are working and then probably imaging not necessary that it's always available. So another thing what you can do is where you feel was the tightest or the most calcified portion which was causing trouble initially. So you take a 1:1 balloon there, and don't go very high pressure here. Idea is just to check a compliance of the balloon. So just go inflate. Suppose your vessel is 3 mm, so take a 3 non-compliant balloon and just inflate it to 8-10 atmosphere. And suppose that significant waste is there at that moment of time, then you can deliver additional pulses at that location.
Yeah.
So that kind of achieves the better plaque modification. And then, as you said, once you are happy with that, once your 1:1 balloon expands well at the lower pressures, then you can deploy the stents. another advantage of IVL is many times these are afterthoughts, and many times in that hasty moment you kind of immediately after IVL you deploy the stents only to realize that stent remains underexpanded. So same IVL can rescue you for the underexpansion as well. So these are the few comments I wanted to give.
I think, Swaroop, there's one question from my side because we have August panel here. Just wanted to know their experience. How many times they came out of a procedure because the balloon did not dilate in their experience? Prasad Reddy sir, how many times you had a situation where you had to come out because the balloon didn't open up in the lesion?
Yeah, I cannot say how many times, but it happened at least in 2-3 times where the
2-3
balloon
times.
did not expand, and then we had to abandon the procedure. And then, of course, when the patient is stable, then probably we keep them. I mean, we observe the patient in the intensive care for some time, and then afterwards we manage medically. Or very few situations where you have sent the patient for surgery, but that is very rare.
Anuj?
I think before Rota, before IVL, yes, we did have lesions that we couldn't dilate and we had to come out and send for surgery. But I think post that now, I think the OPN, IVL, Rota, I think now we generally get out of the situation.
Swaroop?
A couple of situations I do remember in acute MI situation, geriatric patient, he was around 75, right coronary. Of course, IVL was not available at that time, thrombus containing lesion, so probably Rota was relatively contraindicated. I did try a high pressure non-compliant balloon, even OPN was not available. I tried cutting balloon, 1:1, I modified, but with the cutting balloon also it remained underexpanded. The lesion didn't give or didn't open, so I deferred stenting, and because probably that would have led to a more complex problem than the index problem. And after a few weeks we got him back, and then with the other plaque modification techniques the procedure was completed.
With one question, Rajiv has made us all feel old, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember around 2 situations where, again, as Anuj mentioned, I think probably 15 years back the situation was different because the hardware which we had and the hardware which we could maneuver across those lesions was much less. But now with newer modalities, though we still come across situations where nothing can be done, as was shown in the examples by Dr. Uday and Dr. Bhishma. There have been at least 2 situations where the most innocent looking lesions were the ones which fooled us the maximum and were the toughest. So even what I showed in the first case, Dr. Prasad Reddy sir's patient, it didn't look that bad actually, but then nothing was crossing.
Actually, most notorious is, I think, osteal RCS.
Osteal RCS, and so those are the situations where probably we abandoned the procedure and got the patient back again after 2 days or after about 5 days, 1 week. Some patients where there was a dissection, we got them back after about 4 to 6 weeks, and then probably used rotablation or IVL, and then managed to do it successfully. So at least offhand, recently we had one patient where the angioplasty failed in another center, of course that was, and then came back and we could use IVL with guideliner support, and then luckily we were able to finish the procedure. So I think that was an important thing which Anuj mentioned, that with the present day hardware, most of the times we manage to get away with that situation, but still there will be situations where we won't be able to do something. Swaroop?
Yeah, if time permits, I'll just offer a short comment. Because with the guideliner, many of the procedures which were more cumbersome or at times impossible to do are becoming feasible. But word of caution is required for the uses of guideliner, though it appears like just an extension of a soft catheter of the guide extension. How you handle the guideliner is also equally important, especially because if you try to advance guideliner more distally, so it will be non-coaxial, and because of the Razor effect, it will invariably dissect the proximal vessel, and then you will have one more additional problem. We realized this when we were doing TAP recently, LAD-D1, and to deliver a diagonal stent, we had to use a guideliner, and just 1 or 2 millimeter movement of the guideliner was without the balloon, without the inchwork technique, and then that was sufficient for that guideliner to cause the ostial LED dissection, which we covered with the another stent. So guideliner is one of the great modality, I mean one of the great invention which is available, which makes many procedures feasible, but it has to be used judiciously.
One more comment there is, I think when we are using the guideliner, two things are: one, you have to be extremely watchful about the blood pressures because it damps and then we can land up in a lot of issues. Second, because it occludes most of the guide, when we are removing the other hardware, chance of air embolism is extremely high. So we need to be extremely careful about the thing being airtight.
Yeah.
The two things that we need to, otherwise the goodness is actually negated by all the negativity.
Any other final comments, Prasad? Sir? So with that, we'll conclude the session. This session we could not record live, or we could not go live because of the technical issue. So sooner, once that issue is sorted, this session will be uploaded on the relevant channels. Thank you.
Thank you.